All right, Ray, good to see you. Welcome back to the video podcast.
Yep, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
The last one we did was like probably a year ago now, maybe, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So I asked for questions that people might have questions for you. We've got a few questions, and I've got a bunch of other stuff I wanted to talk to you about. And normally you and I wind up talking, and then I get to the questions at the end, and I always wind up having to leave people's questions out. So I thought this time we'll go questions first, and then we can talk about other stuff.
Okay.
So from Coach Rich, he had a few questions. Let's start with the second one, which was explain why providing untrained teachers firearms in the classroom is a bad idea. And there's two things about this. One, Coach Rich is assuming you think it's a bad idea, which you may not. And two, the key word there, because I know Coach Rich, is that word untrained. So first of all, assuming the teacher has no training, what do you think of that idea? And let me just reframe that just a little bit, because the way it's asked. Another way to say that is your wife is a teacher.
Correct.
Do you think she has a right to carry in her classroom, a constitutional right?
So, well, I just know what our laws are here, and believe it or not, our law, the way our law writes in Nevada, specifically Washoe, is that the superintendent can actually give the power to let them, because we're an open carry state. I think we talked about this, like even like some people think it's absolutely nuts. Like you can carry a pistol openly out and walk around. You can't be at federal buildings. Like Costco's private. They'll tell you not to. That's a little different. But they have the right to say no. People will argue that as well. But you can keep it loaded in. You can keep a loaded firearm in your car, under your seat, in your glove box, anywhere in your car here. You just can't hide it on your person unless you're CCW again. So dealing with that here, my wife is trained, obviously. We've gotten her CCW in that, but she understands, she abides the law, and she doesn't take them. And like whenever I go out of town, obviously she feels comfortable with that. But if we're going to go into the realm of the school, I've kind of had these conversations, and we've sat down and talked. It's not that I'm against it. It would be open for conversation. So I would ask questions. The questions I have when that's brought up is going to be, how are they going to be trained? Like, what level is it? And I struggle with it because my wife already has all these extra things that have been put on her to teach in the classroom. We've gotten so far out, and I mean, this is taking a different turn, but we've gotten so out of whack of teaching English and math and, the things that actually are going to carry over into the real world, and we're giving them all these other things that they have to add on. She has all this other stuff that she has to do. Yeah. So now you're going to tack this on. I asked somebody the question once. I said, it's either a car or it's a truck. It's either a knife or it's a fork. It's when you try to combine them to do two different jobs. I need the knife for a specific job. Do I want a teacher, or do I want, somebody that's trained in firearms? So am I against it? Not really. Are we putting more of a responsibility on them to do that? Now, then you'd go back to, well, what if only 5 teachers in the school want to carry and none of the other want to? What's the purpose of it? Is it just for them to protect themselves in the classroom, or are they expected to go out and clear the hallway and save the day? Because then we're going to have a whole other host of issues of what we call blue on blue, officers shooting each other, which happens in training.
Right.
So again, I have all these questions. Is what's that training going to look like? Is it going to be mandatory that they all have to? Is it only going to be up to the ones that want to? How are we going to regulate what happens with that pistol? Because what happens when the teacher leaves it in the classroom, or leaves it on the because cops have done that, leave it in the bathroom and someone finds it. How do we deal with this? There's so much. And I think by introducing that into the school, it just creates all these other problems. Again, not against it. It would just be open for a lot of conversation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And one thing I've gotten from every time I've talked about firearms with you or Paul Sharp, the thing that always, and Andy Stump, but the thing that always comes back over and over again is how important it is to be consistently, constantly training to use that tool. I mean, and I think that's what Coach Rich was getting at, is like how important that is if you're going to carry that responsibility.
Yeah, it's no different than doing jiu-jitsu or that. I mean, how much time are you going to invest in it? And again, then that's another cost, because are you putting that on the teacher? Because if you really want to get into the training, you're you know, and are you going to regulate what kind of gun that they have, or can they just carry whatever they want to carry? Right? Is the caliber going to matter? And then again, like I said, is it just again to protect themselves in that classroom? And then it hope, you know, I'm not planning on leaving. I'm just planning on staying in the classroom if somebody came in. But then it's like we're in this world of equity. Well, now it's not equitable because that teacher has a firearm, but this one doesn't. Well, this one chooses not to. I understand that, and we have all these host of problems that gets brought up. I've been in those conversations as well.
Yeah. You and I have talked a lot about this, and I wrote about this in the book. So I'm really familiar with your answer on this. But for people who aren't, we just had that shooting in Texas, which was terrible. And a large percentage of the population immediately goes towards regulating the tool that was involved, which statistically, for people that don't understand gun violence or don't know, is a tiny fraction of gun homicides every year are done with long guns. And if you talk about specifically the AR-15, it's even smaller. So it very tiny fraction of shootings involve that particular tool. But having said all that, is that the best way to protect kids, or what would be the top 3 things that you would do if you were a school anywhere in this country and the principal is worried about a potential violence like that, school shooting? What are the first 3 things you would tell them they need to do that are actually practical, that could actually save lives?
There's a few, but the top 3 that we've done in our area, and it just makes the most sense, and it's a starting point, and we've added to that. But a starting point is perimeter fencing. So just a fence that goes around, and it's complete, it's full. There's not chunks missing and gaps. But it's perimeter fencing that makes it difficult for anybody just to wander onto the campus. Can they jump the fence? 100%, yes, they can. But when we have people that are vigilant and they see someone jumping the fence, like why would someone jump the fence? Why wouldn't they come through the entrance? Are they carrying a bag? Is it difficult for them? Now you get to see, and it slows them down. So the perimeter fencing. The next is going to be a single point of entry, which is just one way to get into that school. Well, there's multiple ways to get in, but that's the entrance for everyone, right? And it's a little vestibule that traps them inside, and they can come in. It's open and it's wide. It has a computer. You can check in and that whole bit, but you have to be buzzed into the school. All the exterior doors remain locked. It's a locked door. And then the final one would be classroom locks. Most of them have that. Some don't. But ours do. But I know that some that probably maybe not now, but I remember back in the day there were that they didn't, or it was a way that you had to go out into the hallway and lock it. You had to go and turn it around 3 times, pull the key out, and go back into your classroom. But locking all the classroom doors inside. So now you've got this layer. You've got a fence. Then you've got the next layer, which is all the doors, exterior doors locked, and then you've got the interior doors locked. It's layer upon layer, and it's time. I think I've had this conversation with you before. When you talk law enforcement, you have pursuit of person and you have pursuit of time. Well, if it was an active assailant, I'm not really pursuing. Yes, there is a person that we're trying to get to, but it's the time before they start carnage, right? Like if we can delay that amount of time, like it takes them a little bit to get through the first layer. Someone sees them jump the fence and they got a bag or they got a rifle. Oh my God, they call the cops. Now they got to get up to the school. Now they're trying to get in and they're bashing in the door, shooting the door. We're en route now. It takes them a minute to get through that door. Now they're walking through the school and they're looking around. They're trying to get in the classrooms and they can't get in. They're trying to bash their way in, and it's taking another minute, which in our area, you're going to get officers within the first minute and a half easily. I remember the last unfortunate shooting that we had here. We had 132 that showed up, and that was,
132 officers showed up?
I believe so. There's 100 cop cars.
Wow.
Because we're talking agencies. We're talking all the agencies.
Right.
It was like Reno, Sparks, Washoe, Highway Patrol, all agencies. I believe that was the number. I could be off. I could be wrong, but it was over 100. Yeah. Which makes its own problems. But
right.
And I think I even read into one book, it was just called Columbine. I believe in that book, there was something like 400 officers that were there while that SWAT team was searching that school, where 400 people could have stormed that place and just, searched it all along. Anyway, digress. But now I've got layer upon layer to get into to have this active assailant get in there and, cause harm on people. It's giving us time to get there. The other part, which my wife, I told her to do, which the firefighters, we would always argue with the firefighters because we tell them barricade your door. And the firefighter's like, that's a fire code. And I'm like, well, the building's not on fire. We're being shot at.
Yeah.
So I really don't care. And I told my wife, I said, you know what? You tell them find me. Go ahead and find me. I'm perfectly fine with that. So now I've added another layer, to that where you can't get in. And when my wife had she's in a really good school now, but when she had one classroom, there was 5 doors that could get in because the way this school was built, it had multiple doorways to get in from other classrooms. So if another teacher leaves the door open, it makes it difficult now for you. So we put shelves next to all of them so that she could push those shelves over so that the door, and the way her room was, the doors opened in so she could stop it from happening. I got her wedges too to stick underneath the doors. Mm-hmm. If something like that were to happen, again, all I'm trying to do is delay it.
That's an easy, cheap solution too, to put a wedge under the door.
It is. And I'll tell you another story. And I told her, I said, I'm going to tell this. And she kind of chuckled because she remembers it really well. Is when we first started dating, I'd go to her classroom and we might have even been married first year. I go into her classroom and I open the door. I was like, oh, so your door's unlocked. Why is your door unlocked? And she said, well, why would I lock it? And I said, well, somebody comes in to hurt you or your kids. And she says, nah, it's too much. In this, I sympathize with the teachers, right? She says it's too much of a distraction. She said, you got the counselor coming in, you got the speech pathologist coming in, the principal coming in, all these people coming in, taking kids out, teachers that want to get papers and that. And I'm just nodding my head kind of probably sarcastically. And she looks and she goes, what? And I said, you'll be the first to die, you and all your kids. And the teacher next to her, I think his name was Tim. I said, Tim can, thank you at your funeral for being the martyr for saving him and all his kids. And she just looked at me and she was mad. She didn't want to, she's like, you're impossible, that type of a thing. But I think it was like 2-3 months later, she was doing after school tutoring. And my wife is super good about stuff. So she sent home an email. She sent notes home to teacher or to the parents. She did the whole bit. And so this little girl had been staying over for tutoring and she'd been there all week. And it was like a Friday. And the woman, for whatever reason, was mad because my wife had her child. And she came down to the school. It was the end of the day. So she walked through the front entrance. She walked down the hallway into my wife's classroom and went in there violently. I think she'd even been drinking, but she went in there violently. She threatened my wife. She threatened to beat her up. She like got physical in the classroom, scared the kids. And then she wound up leaving. She wound up getting charged with a crime and, obviously going to jail for a couple nights. But after that, my wife said, she started locking her door. I go, why are you locking your door now? She goes, well, you remember that day? I said, yeah. She said, I realized that I was leaving my safety up to the office staff. Like, I'm in control of this, so I'm going to lock my door from now on. The interesting thing, after a year, she came back to me. She said, like a year of doing that, she said the byproduct. So she did it for safety, locking her door. But the byproduct that she got was, one, the students, instead of kids, at that time, she didn't have a bathroom in her classroom. A lot of the modern ones do now, but that one did not. It was an older school. You had to leave and then come back in. It was a distraction. Well, the kids were holding it. They didn't want to go because they didn't want to have to knock on the door. Some would argue it's like, oh, you're making the child suffer or whatever. But they were like, you know what? I don't have to go that bad. I'll wait. And then they'd go to recess and that type of deal. Number two, they knew that Miss Price locks her door. So they made every concerted effort to get there on time because otherwise they had to wait outside until she let them in because they were tardy. Does that make sense? So they didn't want to be tardy for the beginning of school, for coming back from recess because Miss Price locks her door. And then the third was found that the speech pathologist, the teachers, the principals, all of them would set up times. They wouldn't just barge into her classroom.
Right.
All that does now for her is that equals more instruction time for her to teach. If that makes so, she got a really good byproduct out of that, less distraction, better classroom management because she locked her door. Yeah.
Let me ask you another question because I know that you personally looked into just about every school shooting that they've had and all the details about them. So out of all those school shootings that we've had since Columbine, if we go back that far, how many, if they had the first three layers that you talked about, if they had the exterior fence, the single point of entry, and the teachers had locked the door, how many of those do you think would have been dramatically affected or eliminated from the books?
Well, in my presentation, and I've done it all over, one of the ones I did was I was trying to kind of come up with, like, this isn't anything new. This has been around for a really long time. Like,
right.
When you look at, like, back in like 1700s, they'd go in and they would, you know, I could give you examples of doing it. One of the earliest ones, I think it's the earliest one was in America, was in Bath, Michigan. You can look it up. I think the wife's name was Price, which I was like, oh, but I can't remember his name. He wasn't even involved in the school whatsoever. He didn't even have children or grandchildren, to my knowledge. And what he did is he would go to the school, and he had this fertilizer, this type of, I think it was a fertilizer, it was a type of explosive that they used to blow stumps out because he was a farmer.
Yeah.
He put, if memory serves, somebody can check it out, 500 pounds.
Let's keep going. So he put like 500 pounds of fertilizer underneath there?
This explosive underneath the north and the south wing, so 1,000 pounds. How long do you think it takes to haul that in and out of that school?
Right.
And he put it in like barrels, and he wired it up. No association to the school, no students, didn't work there. Not one person asked this guy, like, what are you doing here? He wound up, his wife had, I think, tuberculosis. They didn't have antibiotics back then. He wound up, and he lost his farm, all this other stuff. He blamed the superintendent. You can read all about it. He winds up shooting his wife, lighting his house on fire, and he puts a note on the gate that says, criminals aren't born, they're made. And then he drives to the school. He blew up the school, but only one wing. So he had it in the north and the south wing, and I forget which one blew. When he got there, all the first responders were there pulling, you know, the injured out. And then he drove up with his truck with more explosive in it, got into it with the superintendent, I believe it was, and then boom, blew that up.
How many kids died?
There was a lot. It was a lot. And it was an explosive, right? Someone wouldn't necessarily consider that an active assailant. I do, because the way in which he did it, right? Now, I think that's a problem. Then when you look, I always ask, when I would do the presentation, I'd say, hey, you know, active shooter, like, who remembers the term postal? Mm-hmm. And people kind of, you know, raise their hand, and I go, well, what do you think that was? You know, I said, that it's not new. I said, now, what happened is there was a shift, and it was Columbine that did that shift, and it kind of turned into this school shooter, if you will. And Columbine was very, very prolific in how it changed things, because the way cops operated back then was you stage until SWAT gets there, and SWAT takes care of that. Mm-hmm. But that was the whole thing. It was like I said, something like, again, if the book I read, Columbine, was accurate, that many officers, even if there was 200 officers could storm that school and save the day. But right. They elect one SWAT team, you know, did that.
Right.
Now go back to that. Eric and Dylan, what did they do? They took, again, research that I've done, but you know, the propane tanks that you put in your little barbecue grill? Yeah. They had taken those, like 3 of those, and put them in duffel bags. And they had 2 duffel bags each. So 4 of these giant duffel bags filled with this makeshift explosive. And they didn't go through the front of the school. They went through the rear into the cafeteria so that no one would see them. They knew their school. So there's an exterior door that's locked. No one's confronting these guys. Mm-hmm. Granted, there's students there, but you find it a little bit odd when you've got these giant duffel bags that you're walking into school, right? And they put them on these pillars in the, you know, in the cafeteria. They never went off. When they brought in like explosive guys, and they said, hey, well, does this have the ability to you know, blow this out here? And the guys were like, you know, sure, it has the integrity. If it you know, compromise the integrity of this, it would definitely do that, and it would bring down. This is a load bearing barrier, and what would happen is it'd bring down the whole 2nd floor. So then when you go back and look at that, they asked who was on the 2nd floor. It was staff dining, and those guys had taken copious notes. They were trying to take out the staff while they were doing their carnage. That was going to be their big boom. But again, no one paid attention to them. When you go, it's college setting. The 3 big ones right now, I'm sure Uvalde's probably going to be up there now, but it was Columbine. Every time I asked anybody which ones they remembered, it was always Columbine, Virginia Tech, and Sandy Hook. Columbine, like I said, it was kind of where there was a change. Virginia Tech was just completely and utterly shocking to the conscience because they were first graders. They were just children. I mean, they're all children, but we're talking little guys, right?
You mean Sandy Hook?
Sandy Hook. What did I say? Virginia? Sorry, yeah, Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook, yeah. And then Virginia Tech, that one is quote unquote the highest count, if you will.
And he was using pistols, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Yeah, and from what I understand, talking to guys there, they didn't have locks on those doors. He chained the doors. They had to go through a side door and breach it. Yeah, he went into an empty classroom with his guns, put them down, loaded up, got everything going, and then he actually went into the classrooms. When you go I have a whole after action of it. He walked into the classrooms, opened them, and looked in. And it's like, well, what was he doing? He's probably seeing which room he was going to go into first.
So yeah, Virginia Tech, he had the pistols.
He did have,
and I had the highest body count.
Pistols in Virginia. He did. And obviously, no one stopped him or asked him what he was doing. Granted, college campus, maybe they wouldn't do it. A little bit different, right? But then you had Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook did have a single point of entry, but unfortunately, their single point was either the door or the side was made of glass. Yeah. So he, from what I understand from talking, is basically breached it open by breaking it. And he entered in and then started his carnage. And I've tried to get more detail on that. From what I was told is that he tried a classroom and it was locked, and he tried another classroom and it was unlocked. And that's obviously the one that he went into. If you think about it, they don't want resistance. Any kind of terrorist, bully, predator, they don't want resistance, right? The resistance is what, and they want easy targets, things that are out there. And they know that cops are coming, so they want to get as much as they can before it happens. Right. So again, going back to the whole locking of doors and everything, if you can delay this, you make it better for everybody. So going back to the initial question, when you go back to all of those and when you look at it, like West Nickel Mines was the Amish community. There was an ice cream truck driver. He drove by that school all the time. He wound up going in there and opened the door, went in, and had every intention of molesting these girls. And he locked the door. And from what I understand, those were like state troopers. They didn't have breaching tools, so they were trying to bust through the door. And he wound up shooting all of them and then shooting himself before they got in there. But again, he locked the door and made it difficult for them to get in there. But he went in unstopped or by anybody. I'm trying to think of any others. But when you look back at every single one of those, imagine if they had locked the door. Imagine if they had barricaded the door, again, against the firefighter code. But if they had done this, how much more would that delay? Right. Like, and then there's always this argument too about like metal detectors. And I was like, okay, if you do a metal detector, just imagine if you had, think of the airport. If you had like here at our schools, we have anywhere from 1,800 to 2,500 kids at a high school. Yeah. Imagine one door with maybe one door with 2 or 3 metal detectors. How long is that going to take? Right. And you'd have to put it at every single door. Now, mind you, once you got into the school, let's just go to an elementary school with 800 kids. Okay. You do the same thing. You'd have to do it at multiple doors, but once you got them into the school, you're good. But anytime anybody leaves, they now have to be re-sanitized. So what happens when they go out to recess, right? If you're just going to recess and coming back in, that's a problem. And they told me, why is that? I go, well, because if I'm going to be a shooter, I'm going to take my guns, I'm going to throw them over the fence. I'll let you go ahead and clear me. Then I'll go outside, grab my guns, and come back in and kill everybody. Who would do that? Who wouldn't? I mean, that's if I want to exact my plan, why not? Right. So you'd have to run it like an airport. You would have to completely seal that in. Once you sanitize them, they don't leave. And if they ever do, they have to be researched every single time. If you open a door in an airport, they can't just clear that. Security has to come down. They have to check you out. They have to check the door. They have to do this whole thing to clear it. Why? For safety. I'm not advocating for razor wire and a moat with alligators and everything, but just something super simple. Put up the fencing, make it a little bit harder. Again, single point of entry, lock all the doors. People have to be diligent about that. And interestingly enough, when they started doing that at the high schools, the kids started stuffing things in the door so that they could leave and go out. So people have to go out and audit those doors and make sure that they're not, because they don't want to walk around when they get locked out, right? Right. One of the schools found out when they did that, less drugs were coming into the school, believe it or not. When the door started locking, because they would go out a side door and go get their stuff. Yeah. Now it wasn't so easy. So they found out they were getting less drug issues at the school because of that. And it was like it happened after the doors were locked. I'm just giving you different things that
controlling it at a single point of entry is going to solve a whole bunch of problems that are way more common than school shootings.
Yeah, and that front doorway, that front entryway has to be a little bit more fortified. It can't just be regular, regular glass and that. Yeah, and that's how you slow things down.
That's definitely where I think if we're serious about the issue, where we need to focus on.
That's a start, right? That's a start. There's other things we can do after that, but that's a really good start.
Yeah.
And then there's training that goes in where you're telling your staff that anybody that shows up that doesn't have an ID badge, like people have to have an ID badge to be in the school. You can't just come in whenever you want, It's not, and it's like, well, I'm coming to see my child. Well, I understand that, but there's 800 other children that are here too that aren't yours, So
what really bothers me about here in Portland is, as I think right after the George Floyd incident, Portland removed school resource officers from all the schools. Yeah. And in addition to that, they're so, they have like 30% of what they should have in terms of manpower. They're so they're so limited in how many people are out there that the response times are going to be bad. There's not going to be any officers in the schools. And I know full well I could walk onto most of these campuses and just walk into the school. And
see, that alone is,
it's insane.
I've got a book and it talks about these things. And these are the things that you don't hear. It hasn't happened in this area, but multiple times where they don't have perimeter fencing and exterior doors. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not where multiple people are dying, but sexual predators are going onto the schools, going into a bathroom, waiting for a child to come in there, and then they're molesting them and getting away. Yeah. Because there's no, and we're just, there's no layer of security. There's nothing stopping them from coming in. And I've always asked, like some of the times when you want them to do it, the excuse is, well, we want it to be welcoming. And I said, well, when you were making it welcome, you're making it welcome to them as well. Right. If you're welcome at my house, you know that you're welcome. The students know they're welcome here. So let's, you other people, you're not welcome here, type thing. Right. And I've always asked, I said, so do you leave your house unlocked? Why just leave it open in the middle of the night? Well, no, that's dangerous. Well, of course. Then why wouldn't you have the same attitude towards this? Right.
The analogy I've used with people too before is what happened after 9/11 with airplanes. Everybody was talking about the need to have an air marshal on every flight or to arm the pilots and all this thing. But really the most important thing they did, and the thing they did right away because they were actually serious about security, was reinforcing the cockpit doors and changing the habits of the pilots so they weren't going in and out of the bathroom and leaving that door open. Yeah. And everything else after that, having air marshal, arming a pilot, everything after that, in my mind, is a way distant second. And I don't understand why we're not having a conversation about schools. Yeah. It's a bit frustrating. Well, I don't want to stay on this topic because it's so depressing, but people have asked and people want to know. So when we look at what happened in Uvalde, I've refrained from commenting too much on it because none of us really know what happened. And I'm not even sure if we know what happened now. We just know that something went terribly wrong because, nobody went in there and took out the shooter. What do you think, if you want to talk about this, what do you think the issue was there? Because I don't think to be clear, I don't think it was cowardice. I think there's something else going on.
You and I have talked about this. This is, I don't want to badmouth or Monday morning quarterback because I wasn't there and I don't have the information. But yeah, when you look at it, it looks like, you did not go in there. The argument being, I hear the argument being, oh, well, it was a hostage situation. Mm-hmm. Well, and Tom's, me and Tom have had those conversations and we talked about it. The hostage is the only reason for us to even have where we're not coming in there to do anything. The minute shooting happens, all bets are off and in there. Now, one could argue, well, what if all the shooting happened before they got there? They didn't hear the gunfire, but that's not true. They did hear it. So then why didn't they go in? Right. They feel like he was shooting at the door at them, but even at that, and I understand if that's the route they're going to go, it'll be the argument like if it really was a hostage situation and I press it, then I caused him to shoot those people. I think is going to be the argument. Mm-hmm. But once you start shooting, my argument is the people that he already shot, how many of them could have been saved if we went in there and rendered medical aid? Right. And that's where I have the issue. And I went on immediately and got an overview of that school. That school's very odd the way it's built, but you could see where he entered in and where he was at. It would appear that there was exterior windows. There's so many other things I think that could have been done. And they said that the doors were locked, and now they're saying the doors weren't locked. We don't know. I really can't wait to hear the details. But bottom line is if it is an active assailant where people are actively getting shot at and dying, then what it is it's one officer. There's no more waiting for a team. It's pretty much a standard that you go. And even if there are people there, even if there's people that are wounded, if there's active gunfire, so actively you're hearing the shots go off, you've got to go stop the threat before you render aid. They're now doing things with tactics where a medical element will come in behind and start rendering aid while the tactic team goes and handles the situation. And that kind of got brought on at the LAX shooting when the TSA agent kind of bled out because
the LA airport one.
It was LA airport. Yeah. So it's kind of shifting that, but when there is active shooting going on, and there's the other thing is sometimes, like, we've done it in our own schools where we've taken our own officers in training and we've put them in a school and the shooting's going on. You really can't tell where it's coming from. So we started doing different tactics to make it quicker. And we cut the time down to a third as just going in through a front door to find it. It's if they shoot and then move and then shoot and then move, you're constantly chasing that, trying to find that. That was a small building. From what I understand, when you see the pictures, they're standing there with shields, they're standing there with their guns. I mean, I understand the one complaint was he had a long gun, they had pistols. It's really hard to make a determination until they go. And even if I had a pistol, I'm still going to go. I mean, what else is there? There's innocents that don't have anything. And we went, I told you about the hierarchy of it, right? Yeah. You know, you've got hostages, civilians, police, and then the suspect.
Explain for people who don't know what that means.
Priority of life, it's a term that's been used for quite a while. I think NTOA coined it, but when you put the priorities of life, it's going to be your hostages, your civilians, then your police officers, and then suspects. That's the order of life, the priority that takes place, the hierarchy of it. And the
priority should have been the kids.
Yes, they're hostages and civilians.
At the very least, we could call that some kind of catastrophic failure of leadership, I would think, right?
Yeah, and if you want to talk leadership, that's where it's like, I also heard the argument where they were like, the cop showed up and said, hey, we got to go in. They're like, no, not until we were ordered not to. All right, well, I'll sign my papers afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get, again, and I don't want to talk about it, it would just be like, well, just go. So I don't know the circumstances, but if it was an order that said, no, don't go, and I'm hearing active gunfire, I guess I'd have to be there to see it and feel it. But if it felt right, like, no, there are people dying, I'm going.
Right.
I don't know what excuse there could be why you wouldn't. I'm trying to be sympathetic to it. I can't think of any.
Yeah, I hear you.
I can't.
So another question we got from Coach Rich, it's a good question. He's asking about how you balance the question everybody has all the time. How do you balance your fitness, your weight training, your recovery, your jiu-jitsu, family, your job? Like, what's a daily, like a weekly schedule for you look like?
Okay. I've tinkered with this for quite some time. I remember a time where I was working out too much and my jiu-jitsu suffered because my body was so sore. Like, it would like he touched me and I just couldn't move right. So I was like, I've got to back off on the volume that I'm doing. So I've tinkered with that back and forth. I'm pretty solid now and just understanding what my body wants. And so I do 4 days a week of weights. And it's roughly an hour. Sometimes it's 45 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour and 15. But that's about it. And my weights are structured around the three main lifts: bench, deadlift, and squat. And I'll usually do like a heavier weight, lower rep on that. And then I'll do a lot of accessory work, kind of like Jim Windler's 5-3-1. Huge fan of that guy. Mm-hmm. I did his workout for years. And now I'm doing a program on the phone, which is pretty easy. And I think Leah Taylor still does it. She said she loved it. It's Juggernaut AI. Mm-hmm. And it's a really easy way to follow it. I used to personal train, but I hate writing up my own workouts. My wife will ask me for one, I'll write her one up, but I hate doing my own. So this just makes it easy for me to follow someone telling me what to do, and I go in and I do it. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I do weights, and I get up super early and do it. And it's not, everybody's like, oh, it's Jocko, it's Jocko. It's not, it's my wife actually that got me to do it. Because I was working, and especially when I took this new position, I'm always on call. So I get in there to work out, and I would get phone calls from work, and it was always things to handle. And my workouts were taking 2.5, 3 hours sometimes. And I was so mad. And she was like, you're insufferable. And if you don't start figuring a workout, I'll kill you. She says, why don't you do it in the morning? So I pouted like a big fat baby, and I was like, no, I shouldn't have to. But I got up super early and I did the workout, and I've been doing it for probably 2 or 3 years now, and I will stick to that. So I get up about, I wake up naturally now, like 4:20.
Wow.
I wake up about 4:20, 4:30 in the morning. I wake up, go to the bathroom, get dressed, right into the gym. And then I'm done working out anytime, 6 o'clock. And then I do a little studying, and then I eat my breakfast, and then off to work. But that's the weights. And then on Wednesdays, my recovery on that, my Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, I try to stretch. And I do stretch more. Like when I tore this tendon, which wasn't from weightlifting, my physical therapist, which I still go to. So physical therapy, I've really found I actually like just going consistently for prehab. And she just works my hips. She works my back. She works anything and she gets me doing these stretches, and she's actively got me doing all this. So that's my recovery work. And then I teach and do jiu-jitsu on Mondays and Saturdays. And then I've been going on Tuesdays and Fridays with my son. Not lately, but I'm going to get back into that. So I'll do jiu-jitsu 4 days a week as well. So the Tuesdays and Fridays, I get to just roll a lot. Even on Mondays and Saturdays, after class, after I teach, I try to roll with as many people as I can. And it's good, and just kind of feel that. I do like, Element. That keeps me going. LMNT, Rob stuff. That stuff really helps me sleep better, and it also helps me with the working out. Yeah. So I think I answered that. I mean, I don't do any kind of bro split or anything like that. Like I said, the Juggernaut AI, and I'm not, I don't get any money from them. What's really cool about it is AI. It asks you questions like, how much sleep did you get? It asks you how you feel, if you're sore, and you answer these questions, and it'll actually dial up weight.
Well, I think we got it, though. It's AI, which Lynn will love, applied to training, which is awesome. I have one question, though. If you've written routines for me before, so you like writing routines, or you will write routines for other people, why don't you want to do it for yourself?
I don't know. I hate it because I overanalyze it. I overthink it. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I hate it. Like when I was over, my buddy Monty, who actually got me in, I used to think I wanted to be a bodybuilder. We were just talking about this. I was like ready to do it. Monty took me, a good friend of mine, he's a fire captain up at Incline Village. He took me to Vegas to my first Olympia show. These men are so incredibly huge. I mean, ungodly big. Like, I didn't have any idea when you look at the magazine. I mean, huge. And I was like, yep, not for me. But those guys, they got me into the lifting, and they really brought me up to where I'm at now. But Monty's coach, he wound up moving away. I paid this guy $20, and he'd take a little square tab, and he'd put 4 days of workouts for a whole month. I'd just pay him $20. And I would personal training at that gym at the time, but I pay him to write my routine for me because I just like,
That's funny. That's funny.
It is. Super funny.
Last question from Coach Rich is, why do you think it's important for white to blue belts to focus on escapes? He specifically said white to blue belts, but we could expand that for everybody even. Yeah.
Oh, man. You probably answered it way better than I can. For me, I think I told you where I'm looking at right now. And I mean, so with my white belts, what I told him, and you told me it was a good structure. Now we'll put it on video. And if it's bad now, anybody can tell me. And I'm always open to change, right? But with my white belts, I try to tell them the first 2 stripes are about survival from all positions, right? I want them to be able to survive. Like if they get tapped out like every 2 seconds, like, all right, we'll make it 3 seconds, make it 5, make it 10, and elongate that. And not about muscle, but about structure of your body. Are you finding those good postures? Right. And from all the positions. And then I'll give you those stripes. And then the next 2 I'm looking for now, escaping in posture. Because what happens is they got great posture, then they go to escape and they do this and they get choked out. So now I want you to escape with good posture. So now we're working those escapes in those different various positions. And again, you don't have to get out on everybody, but you have the right idea. You're trying to do the right thing, and you're doing that. That'll earn you those stripes, and then eventually you're blue. And then I look for the blue belt. Those first 2 stripes is top pressure now. Now you're being able to hold people down, not with muscle, not with strength, but with body weight, with positioning, with angles. You get that. And then the final 2, which I take from you is you can't have a purple belt until you have an open guard. Right. So now you got to work on your open guard. And the way I see that, the hierarchy of it is if you went from the open guard now, if all of a sudden I swept you and I'm on top, now I have the top stuff, like just in the natural order of things. Oh, all of a sudden you re-roll me. Now I'm back to survival and escape. Whoop, I re-sweep you. You're in my guard. I sweep you and get on top. And now I've got the whole gambit. Now I can give you your purple belt and send you on your way to figure out what your game is. Mm-hmm. But I've given you the foundation to do that. Mm-hmm. So why those first? Because it's the bottom. It's the foundation. It's the rock. Yeah. And if I go back to my black belt, that Ironman, I remember just being exhausted. And the one thing was survival, just being able to survive in there and wait for the timing to go ahead and escape and to get out. Because you're not going to roll 75 people and just be, golden.
And that's always the jiu-jitsu people fall back on in their Ironman, which is interesting. Always. Yeah. That basic foundational defensive material, which is so important.
People can go ahead and you grow to love them if you're truly if you truly love the idea of learning and understanding, because that will teach you more about yourself. I think of maybe like a marathon, right? Like Paul could answer that, but it's gutting that out, and you learn more about yourself and what you need. You'll find your holes real quick in an Ironman.
Yeah. We've gotten away from the Ironman here at the gym since COVID, and we're going to have another one, and I'm going to call everybody that got their belt during COVID up, and I'm going to bring them out there because it is important. It's a tradition. In fact, Salome told me the other day, because I had been giving out belts without making them Ironman during this, that she didn't want a belt unless she can Ironman, and because it was a really positive experience for her.
Well, I told you when you said it to me, and it hit me like a Mack truck, and I told Tom and Woodard and even Chris, I said, this is your last one. You never have to do another Ironman unless you want to.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, that's sad. And they're like, well, it's sad for you because you're already a black belt. I said, no, because a couple guys have still put me through them, and I'll actually put myself through. I'll just roll everybody in the gym.
Yeah.
But they're you need them.
Yeah.
You need them.
Absolutely. So Coach Todd is here from my gym, and he's been working your curriculum. He calls it the Ray Roll, but the part of the curriculum that's on your series, which is unpinnable. Yeah. And he was sending you his interpretation of mechanics. And how did he do, or what is he missing, or what does he need to work on there?
Yeah, I liked what he wrote. And so the Ray Roll, I think Paul's the one that coined that, because when he was still up in Chicago, he's like, we're doing the Ray Roll and stuff like that. He said, I think the first thing he had said was a tight attachment. And I've really purposeful with words. So tight as in no space, as in connected, not as in muscle and squeezing.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to make that differentiate, make sure that that's there. So I do definitely want to have that attachment in some way to dip that shoulder, or to hold that shoulder to me, really. Because I can mechanically do it by, when I showed him, by walking my body out, and that rolls them. If this helps people, the one thing that I see is it's literally like doing a jiu-jitsu somersault roll. I'm going shoulder to hip, but I'm making them do that with either my movement or the momentum, right? But like, even if you go, because I still use it to this day, your little ankle thing from side ride, you grab the ankle and you dump them. Yeah, it's the same sweep. It's the exact same sweep. Or if I go under,
just going the other way.
Yeah, well, I'm going and I'm dipping the shoulder and dropping them, but I'm doing the same. If you took my body out and you just saw theirs, their body would be doing the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go in from like a side ride and you do the wrestler's thing where you grab the back of the head like a quarter Nelson, or you go here and you dip the head. That's all I'm doing is rolling them.
Yeah.
If you go to a butterfly sweep and I'm facing them and I trap the arm, I dip the shoulder and I lift the hip, they're doing the same roll. So the attachment to that shoulder so that I can move and elevate that hip, however it works, whether it'd probably just be me dragging their shoulder underneath me that's going to elevate the hip. But if I can do it with an elbow or with a knee or something, that will, yes, sweep them over, because you're getting their silhouette outside of that base point, and then tips them.
Yeah, I really try now to teach all the students early on when they're white belts about skinny X, because it makes such a huge difference once they understand the angles, because that's everywhere. It's in every turnover you find. Salome had a question she wanted me to ask you about how you come up with your ideas for drills. She liked your drill that you did here for Unpinnable when she was at the seminar. Yeah,
they're usually, believe it or not, it's like I get a smirk, because it's like stuff like you do stuff, and I'd always ask you, and you're like, I don't know, I just wanted to see what would happen.
Right.
You know, like with Tom and his brother, when you made them brawl it out. And I'm like, what were you looking for? You're like, I don't know. I just wanted to see those two fight. But a lot of the times, honestly, I'll see something where maybe they're not doing something that I want them to do, or maybe the partners are not being good partners. They're just trying to defeat it. So I will remove certain things and just mini isolate a position, kind of like that arm. I'll just mini isolate that thing. So it usually comes down to just the room. And if I like the drill, or I get good results from it, I'll write that down and go, oh, I'm going to keep that. And if I ever teach this to like a seminar, I'm going to make sure that I do that. Because sometimes the drills will go and it's just like, well, that was a nightmare. Yeah. But a lot of times it's just a micro isolation drill born out of an isolation drill. Mm-hmm. So I see the deficiency in what's happening with the performance that they're doing and go, okay, I really want them to focus on this.
Yeah. Yeah, and experimenting in class, keeping the stuff that works really well.
Correct.
Narrowing it down, focusing on just a specific thing, tool, or movement, or angle, right?
Yeah, like if it were like guard passing, when you did guard passing where you forced us to grip and hold on, mm-hmm. just that dumb drill alone, right? Mm-hmm. I'll do that from guard retention. So I'll make them, all right, what's your favorite grip? So they'll go sleeve and collar. Okay, you are not allowed to let go. Roll. You can't let go, no matter what. So they're here and here, and then they get put into an R-bar, great. And I told them, you'll learn from doing that when you have to tap. Like I should have let go a long time ago. I should have let go before my arm got compromised. But sometimes I think they let go of the grip too soon, when they're grabbing it, or they hold on too long.
Right.
So again, a micro drill, and I got tons of success from that. So then I started forcing it where they had to, I'd let them let go, and they could grip. They could find a grip anywhere they wanted in one other grip, and then they had to hold it. So then, or I would it'd be a call out drill, switch, and you can only switch one at a time. Or I'd say switch, and you had to switch both. Right. And you start creating these drills, and you start to see. And I'm not looking to there's nothing specific. It's really to make them figure it out.
Yeah.
Because this is my newest thing we were talking is with drilling is I want them to do data collection. And that's what I like about isolation drilling, right? if you guys are concerned about winning or losing, I tapped out 25 people in Saturday's class. You're here for the wrong reason. I want you to go through and roll as many times as possible and collect as much data. I said the person that collects the most data truly wins, because you're going to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then you're going to do it on all these people, and you're going to be so much more successful because you're going to have your own experience to draw from. And when I teach it, there's not going to be a blank spot. Like when you teach something and you have to know this, I'll teach them and they'll go, oh yeah. And they'll do the deal. And then 6 months later, go back and you look at your notes and you'll teach them. They go, oh, you never taught this before. I'm like, yeah, I did. You just weren't ready to see it.
Right. So for people who may not know, you released your first video series. It came out a few weeks ago, Unpinnable. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about it? What can they expect? What will they see on it? What's the focus of it?
First off, it was a great experience, so thanks for letting me do that. And hopefully, if all goes well, maybe next year we can do all top.
Yeah, for sure.
For it. I've been working on that. But this series, said so many different ways, but it's if I had to just say one thing, it teaches you how to move. I guess when I looked back and I dialed it down, I was learning that if I could get my shoulder free or connected in such a way to their body, I could either roll them or escape with much more ease versus using my arms and my hands. So the drills specifically, just even the no hands drill, but in ways in which to do it. Like one of the ways was like I talked about in the drill in the video is playing chess or more audible where you're talking it through. But there's variations of using your hands and how to use your hands or where you can grip and how you can grip. There's various levels of doing that teach you how to move better so that when you do use your hands or whatever escape that you want to use, it makes it that much more efficient. So the series, there should be a lot of seminar footage in there, which Adam Singer said he really appreciated the seminar footage. Rich Bobit and Mike Sion from North Dakota SBG, they both said that those first 10 lessons alone gave them hours worth of drilling to do. I've gotten lots of feedback. There's people I didn't even know. There's a guy that's a cop in Pennsylvania somewhere told me it was great. He watched the first series, the first 10 videos, went in, and he said he wrote me back and said, I hit the sweep on people. I did it. He goes, it's great. He goes, I even did it on upper belts. So I think there's a lot of success in it, but it's not a series that you just watch and go, oh, okay, I've seen that. It's a series where I give you a lot of drills that you can go on your own personal. You don't even have to tell anybody you're doing it. You can just go in and roll with those drills in mind to collect the data that you need in order to make your movement and your escapes more efficient.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I asked you to shoot that video is because after I saw your material and went through it, I was thinking to myself, this is something I want every SBG coach to know. And it's one of those things like after seeing it, I can't imagine not teaching it or showing that part of it in teaching escapes, because it makes people's understanding of how to escape so much better when you isolate those really important parts, which are the hard parts, right? The base and posture and connection. That's where it's all
right.
So where did you mentioned when we were talking earlier, it didn't really start clicking for you till you were a black belt. Did I have that right?
Yeah, because like the initial movement I learned, it was one of the very first escapes or movements, I should say, movements you taught me as a white belt off of MLK when I went to that gym. It was the first when I just met you. It was the first lesson, and I remembered it because I went home and tried to do it because it made so much sense. And it's just how to turn from cross sides to cross sides, not rolling on your back, but rolling on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the initial of that skinny X, that motion. And it did not even resonate with me until I started to see that pattern in all these different escapes. And I was like, oh, well, there it is. And then when you start to add the attachment in and then you start to think about the connection, it all comes together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I sometimes tell people you don't really start learning jiu-jitsu till black belt, and people sometimes get depressed when I say that, because if they're not a black belt, it seems like so far away, but it really is true. Because that's when you start to put together things and you see them in all the different places, and then everything starts to become the parsimony starts to take effect, and you do more with less.
Yep. I guess it makes more sense. You understand, like that white to blue, like I was telling in when we were talking earlier, and then you get purple and you collect all this stuff and you go, all right, coach, here's my game. And then you get your brown belt and they kind of smooth that out a little bit more and lose some more of that, right? Now you get that black belt and it's like, now you understand why you do all that. You understand why it works. You understand how to make it more efficient. You understand how to teach it to other people. That's I think, because I understand at a completely different level. When you go to these camps now, or when you'll say something, it'll be like, even when I was filming the series, something I should have figured out. It was one of the ones I told you I didn't like doing. You're like, well, why wouldn't you turn your hand over? And I was like, well, because I didn't think of that. That's why. And the minute you did that, I was like, boom, now I like that again.
Yeah.
Something that you overlooked. So simple.
Yeah. So you put your whole curriculum in there, right?
Pretty much. I mean, I can't think of anything that was left out. I mean, obviously the escapes, anybody can put them in there. I think the key is talking about that, what you to do with your shoulders and how to free your shoulders and how to make them connect better.
Yeah, that connection is huge.
Yeah. I like the stuff that Glenn's doing with it. He's coming up with the same stuff where you connect that shoulder makes a really big difference of what that does to that body. Yeah. And I think where we talked about, opposing too, shoulder. A lot of times I find them really, really driving with this shoulder, but not driving this one back. You've got to do them together. And that goes back to Coach Frankel. It's kind of the same thing that he was saying.
Yeah. One of the cool things from the last camp when we were all in Alabama was seeing without any communication between the coaches, which is really the way I like it anyway, but everybody always wants to check what everybody else is doing because everybody's afraid they're going to cover the same topic, but I prefer that nobody even knows. And in the end, no matter what, invariably, every camp, everybody's on kind of the same page and seems to be working towards the same type of material, and that's really cool to see organization-wide.
Don't disagree. The camps they're the absolute best. The last camp there's so much gold from that alone. There's so many like Gus's and Whittier's meshed so well together, right?
Yes.
And then even Inman, even his stuff, like all three of those together, it was like they all taught from the same position, or somewhat same, but the concept, it was all great. I could go on and on about that.
Oh yeah, Steve's way of picking up that arm was really, really great.
Oh, yeah, and I love his name. If you're talking about Whittier, when he was talking about, he called it smear campaign.
Yeah,
that's a pretty cool title.
Right. Well, before we go, I want to let everybody know the next one, because you were asking about that too. That's the very end of September, and I think it's the weekend of October 1st, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, September 3rd, Friday, October 2nd.
Yep. It'll be in Boise, Idaho at our SBG gym there, and they recently remodeled. They have a ton of space, so it's going to be awesome. It's a cool town, too, for anybody that hasn't been there. It's a nice place for family and kids.
Yeah, when I went down there, I saw the remodel before it was open, and the gym, I can only imagine how much better it looks now. Is amazing. 2, the city super clean. The downtown is awesome. Great places to eat. They even have those little scooters that you can ride all around. It's super clean. There's really it's very, very family oriented. It'll be a great place to have camp.
100%. That's going to be good. You're going to be teaching there, right?
I am.
Good. And before we go, too, for anybody that's interested in your video series, we're going to have a sale for 4th of July. I believe the code is America, but as long as they're on the SBG mailing list, you will get an email on all that information. And, thanks for taking the time, Ray. I appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Coach. Thanks.